Imagine a patient steps into your clinic carrying a fear that most people never see. It's not the fear of a diagnosis. It's not the fear of pain. It's the fear of not being seen. Or worse, being seen and dismissed. Being reduced to a label, or being treated like a problem instead of a person. Before you greet them, before you offer a smile, and before you even look up from the chart, they're already asking themselves, will this person actually see me for who I am? Or will they only see a label? Will they talk to me? Or the assumption they've already made? You can almost feel the tension in their shoulders, the guarded posture, the half-held breath. That fragile, deeply human moment, that's where your role becomes so much bigger than vitals and charts. That's where trust is either born or broken. And whether you realize it or not, you're being tested in that moment. Not by a supervisor, and not by a chart, but by a human being who's silently asking, can I trust you with who I really am? Welcome back to MAP, Medical Pathways for Success. I'm your host, Fred Nazario Alvarado. Today, we're stepping into a conversation about what it truly means to care for every patient with dignity, compassion, and understanding. We're talking about identity, race, culture, gender, orientation, and every part of who a person is, and how your awareness, your language, and your presence can transform the way your patients experience care. Now, I want to be clear about something from the start. While today's episode will share personal stories that focus on honoring gender identity, the principles we discuss apply to every dimension of who a person is. Race, ethnicity, culture, disability, age, sexual orientation, social economic background, religion, and more. These identities often intersect. A patient might be a Black transgender woman, or an elderly immigrant with a disability, or a young person from a low-income background navigating a chronic illness. When we talk about honoring identity, we're talking about seeing the whole person, all of who they are, not just one piece. Every patient, regardless of their background, deserves to feel safe and respected in your care. Because here's the truth. You have the power to be the moment when someone finally feels safe. Let's get into it. When we talk about identity in healthcare, we're not just discussing terminology or chart updates. We're talking about real people, real emotions, real fears, and real experiences that stay with them long after they leave your care. For many individuals, walking into a medical setting means walking into uncertainty. They don't know if they'll be honored or harmed, and that uncertainty alone can change everything about their care. And here's something we have to acknowledge. This fear didn't come from nowhere. The healthcare system has a painful history with marginalized communities, a history that still echoes today. The Tuskegee syphilis study, where Black men were deliberately left untreated for 40 years. Henrietta Lacks, whose cells were taken and used for research without her knowledge or consent, and whose family received nothing for decades. Documented disparities showing that Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women. Studies reveal that patients of color are less likely to receive adequate pain management because of assumptions and biases. These aren't distant memories. For many patients, this history lives in their families, their communities, and their own experiences. They carry it with them into every exam room. So when a patient seems guarded, when they hesitate to share information, when they question your recommendations, understand this. There may be generations of reasons behind that wall. People avoid appointments. They delay treatments. They stay silent about symptoms because the fear of being dismissed, corrected, or disrespected outweighs the fear of being sick. Research shows that transgender and gender nonconforming individuals face significant health disparities, partly due to experiences of discrimination in healthcare settings. Studies have found that patients from marginalized communities, whether due to race, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, or socioeconomic status, are more likely to report poor communication with providers, delayed care, and negative health outcomes. The stakes aren't small. For some, they're life and death. And as healthcare professionals, we have the power to either ease the fear or reinforce it. Every interaction is a choice, and I learned that lesson the hard way. I need to share something with you. A moment I'm not proud of, but one that changed me. When I worked at a hospital, I was on a unit that received every kind of patient. Step down from ICU, med surge, psych, everything. There was a day I will never forget. We had a patient who was male by birth, identified as a woman, and her preferred pronouns on her chart were listed as she, her. She was bedbound, vulnerable, and completely dependent on us for everything. As a patient care technician, I was helping the nurse wash her up, and the nurse, repeatedly, referred to her as he, him, and used her birth name instead of the name she lived by. Each time, the patient said softly, "Please, please call me she." Each time, the nurse ignored it, dismissed it, steamrolled it as if the words didn't matter. But they did matter. They mattered deeply. I just stood there and watched the patient's face change. The hope drained out. Her shoulders curled inward. She stopped asking. I felt it. I knew it was wrong. My heart dropped with every misused pronoun. And I stayed quiet. I was new. I was unsure and I was intimidated. But those are explanations, not excuses. Because in the moment, the patient wasn't just disrespected by one person. She was failed by two. I should have spoken up. I should have stood by her identity. I still carry the weight of that day, not because I said the wrong thing, but because I said nothing at all. And that silence taught me one of the most important lessons in my healthcare career. Silence is a choice, and in healthcare, silence can cause real harm. The patient deserved better. Every patient deserves better. The way we address someone, the language we use, the pronouns we honor, and the effort we make to respect who they are is not optional. It is foundational to care. Language in healthcare isn't just about conveying information. It's about acknowledging humanity, your tone, your phrasing, your word choices. These shape the very first impression a patient forms of you. Before many patients answer your first question, they're silently listening to how you speak. They're watching for small cues, the pronouns you choose, the assumptions you make, or the way you introduce sensitive topics. These little moments tell them whether they need to guard themselves or whether they can finally exhale. Let me take you back to that hospital room, not to retell what happened, but to show you what was happening inside me, because understanding that internal struggle is where this lesson lives. I remember standing beside that bed, watching the patient try, so gently, so respectfully, to advocate for herself. Please, call me she. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't demanding. It was a plea for dignity, just to be seen. And I remember the look in her eyes, that slow shift from hope to hurt to something deeper, a quieter resignation that said, "This happens to me all the time." I felt the discomfort. I felt the wrongness. I had the instinct to do something, and the fear that held me back. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed silent. That silence has stayed with me, not as a wound, but as a lesson I've carried into every patient interaction since. Here's what it taught me. You don't have to know everything. You just have to be willing to learn, to ask, and to show respect. When a patient shares something about their identity, and you're unsure how to respond, it's okay to say, "I want to get this right. Can you help me understand what this means for your care?" Or, "Thank you for sharing that with me." You can also try, "What name would you like me to use?" There's incredible strength in humility. Patients don't expect perfection. They don't expect you to know every term or every nuance. What they expect, and deserve, is effort, honesty, and respect. Let me give you some specific phrases that create safety. Instead of, "Do you have a wife or husband?" try, "Do you have a partner?" Instead of assuming, ask, "What name would you like me to use? What pronouns do you prefer? Is there anything about your culture or religious practice I should know so I can care for you respectfully?" These phrases might feel awkward at first, and that's okay. Like any skill in healthcare, they become natural with practice. What matters isn't that you get it perfect, it's that you're trying. Patients can feel the difference between someone who's learning and someone who doesn't care to. When you make a mistake, and you will, correct yourself with grace. I'm sorry. Let me say that correctly. If they correct you, then say, thank you for correcting me. These simple phrases become powerful messages. I see you. I hear you. You don't have to hide here. When language is used with intention, patients sit up straighter. They make eye contact. They answer fully instead of giving unguarded responses. They feel they can share the details that help you provide accurate care. But when language is careless or dismissive, walls go up, information closes off, and care becomes incomplete. Patients remember every moment they felt invisible far more deeply than any blood draw or exam. Your words can either add another wound or begin to heal one. Bias is one of the most uncomfortable truths in healthcare. Not because we want to hurt people, but because we don't always realize when we are. Every one of us carries unconscious biases. They come from how we were raised, who we've been around, what we've learned, and what we've absorbed from society. Bias doesn't make you a bad person, but ignoring it can make you a dangerous one. For many healthcare professionals, bias shows up in small ways: a slight shift in tone, a hesitation before asking a question, a subtle assumption about a patient's lifestyle or choices. Maybe you assume a masculine-presenting patient wants to be called sir. Maybe you ask a woman about her husband without knowing if she has one or wants one. Maybe you see a patient's neighborhood on their intake form and make assumptions about their education or compliance. These aren't moral failures. They're human patterns, but they affect real people. These things might feel small to you, but to a patient, especially one who has been repeatedly misunderstood, they land like a weight. Looking back at my experience, I now recognize that nurse came from a culture where gender identity was rarely acknowledged or accepted. She wasn't trying to be cruel. Her reactions were rooted in what her culture taught her. But here's what we all have to face. Even when bias is cultural, the impact still reaches the patient. It still hurts. It still invalidates. It still breaks trust. Whether bias comes from culture, upbringing, religion, or personal belief, it does not belong in the care we deliver. Reducing unconscious bias starts with one brave step: acknowledging that we have it. Not with shame, not with defensiveness, but with honesty. It means asking yourself, why did I assume that? Why did I hesitate? Or what belief is influencing my reaction right now? This is where growth begins. When you pause instead of react, when you listen instead of assume, when you ask instead of label, you break the pattern of unconscious bias and replace it with conscious compassion. Bias clouds our clinical judgment. It limits the questions we ask. It shapes the risk we assume or dismiss. It can lead us to overlook symptoms or misunderstand a patient's reality. But when you approach every patient with the mindset, I am here to understand, not to decide who you are, you create clarity and connection that elevates your care. You can choose every single day to be better than biases you've inherited. And here's what gives me hope. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to reflect, to learn, to grow, and to take responsibility for your impact. Patients will feel that. They will trust that. And you will see your relationships, your communication, and your care improve in ways you could never have imagined. When we acknowledge our biases and choose to rise above them, we begin to create a different kind of environment. One where patients can finally feel the relief of acceptance. Before a patient ever hears your voice, before they answer a health history question, before they sit on an exam table, they're already reading the environment around them. The waiting room, the energy of the staff, the tone of the front desk, and the facial expressions. For patients with marginalized identities, these small details can mean the difference between feeling safe or feeling like they need to shrink themselves just to get through the visit. I once watched a patient visibly relax, shoulders drop, breath slow, the moment they saw a small rainbow sticker on a staff member's badge. That tiny symbol told them, you might be safe here. That's the power of environment. But a welcoming environment isn't just about posters or stickers. It's built through consistency in tone, and respect in how every member of the team communicates. Creating a welcome environment means being intentional with every detail. The language on your forms. Do they allow space for chosen names and pronouns? The questions you ask. Are they open-ended or assumption-based? How you respond when someone reveals who they are. Do you flinch? Pause? Shift uncomfortably? How you correct a colleague who misgenders or disrespects a patient. Now, I want to pause here and make an important point about environments, because this ties directly back to the story I shared earlier. I mentioned that intake forms should include spaces for chosen names and pronouns. And that matters. It really does. But here's the hard truth. A checkbox on a form means nothing if the person reading it doesn't honor what's written there. That patient at the hospital I worked at, her chart had her correct name. Her pronouns were documented. The system did its job, but the nurse didn't. Systems don't protect patients if individuals don't honor them. That's why this work isn't just about policies and procedures. It's about you and the choices you make every single time you look at a chart, walk into a room, and open your mouth to speak. Some other things to consider are using questions like, who supports you at home? Who should we involve in your care? And how can I make you more comfortable today? These questions aren't extra steps. They're the foundation of trust. And remember, family doesn't always mean biological family. Many patients, especially those in the LGBTQ+ community, have what we call chosen families, support networks made up of close friends, partners, and community members who may be more present and supportive than their biological relatives. When you ask who should be involved in their care, be open to whoever they say. Don't question it. Don't raise an eyebrow. That person standing in the waiting room might be more family to your patient than anyone who shares their blood. Honor that. A safe environment is built by people, by the way we greet patients, by the way we hold space for their stories, by the way we take responsibility when we get something wrong, and stand up for them when someone else does. And I want to be real with you about something. Sometimes, even when we do everything right, patients remain guarded, and that's okay. Their trust wasn't broken by us, and it won't be healed in a single visit. But we still show up with respect, not for the outcome we want, but because it's the right thing to do. And because sometimes, the lessons that change us most come from unexpected places. So here's the question you might be asking. Did I grow from that experience at the hospital? Or have I remained silent since then? Here's the truth. Sometimes life doesn't just test us, it transforms us in ways we never expected. After that day in the hospital, I thought I understood the importance of respecting identity. I thought I had learned my lesson. But then life gave me a teacher I never saw coming. Someone very close to me, someone I loved deeply, came to me and shared that he identified as he, him, not she, her. And I have to be honest, it was hard at first. Not because I didn't love him, not because I didn't want to support him, but because my mind struggled to catch up to what my heart already knew was true. I had questions. I had confusion. So I reached out to a close friend and talked it through. I needed to process what I was feeling and figure out how to be the support he deserved. And through that conversation, something shifted. I realized this isn't about what makes sense to me. This isn't about my comfort level. This is about his truth, his identity, his life to live. Who am I, even as someone who loves him, to decide what someone else's truth is? My role is to love him, support him, and stand beside him. Have I been perfect? No. It's been a few years now, and just the other day I slipped and said, she. But I caught myself immediately and corrected it. Sorry, he. Because that's what matters. Not perfection, but effort. Not getting it right every time, but caring enough to fix it when you don't. I'm still on this journey. I'll probably make mistakes tomorrow. But every time I catch myself, every time I correct course, I become a little more of the person and the healthcare professional I want to be. This personal experience made everything real in a way the hospital experience never could. Now, when I think about a patient hoping to be seen and respected for who they are, I think about him. I think about what it would feel like if he walked into a clinic and someone refused to use his correct pronouns. How it would hurt if someone made him feel like a burden for simply existing as himself. And I realize I want every healthcare professional who cares for him to treat him with the dignity he deserves, which means I need to be that professional for someone else's loved one. Since then, I've worked in clinics where patients with diverse identities walk through the door. And every single time I make the choice I wish I had made that day in the hospital. I use the correct pronouns, even if I have to pause and correct myself. I ask their preferred name and use it consistently. I make space for them to share what I need to know to care for them respectfully. I don't do this because I'm supposed to. I do it because I finally understand, in the deepest way possible, why it matters. When a patient feels seen, something extraordinary happens. They open up. Not just about their symptoms, but about their fears. Not just about their medical history, but about the truths they've been too afraid to share. Honest care requires honest communication, and honesty only grows in the presence of safety. This isn't just emotional, it's clinical. When a patient trusts you, they tell you the truth. They share risk factors they once hid. They talk about partners, behaviors, or concerns they kept quiet. This honesty leads to better diagnosis, better treatment, and better outcomes. It leads to preventative care instead of emergency care, follow-up appointments instead of years of avoidance, and collaboration instead of resistance. For some patients, your respect might be the first they've received in a long time, or ever. And for some patients, whether they feel safe enough to seek care at all, is all a matter of life and death. The transgender patient who avoids the doctor because of the past traumas. The immigrant who delayed treatment because they don't trust the system. The person of color who ignores symptoms because they've been dismissed before. Your respect isn't just kindness, it's healthcare. It saves lives. You might be the first person who used the correct pronouns without hesitation. The first who didn't look surprised or uncomfortable. The first who made them feel like they belonged. That moment becomes a memory, one they return to every time they think about seeking care again. Your kindness can break a cycle of avoidance. Your professionalism can restore trust. Your respect can save a life. Not with medicine, but with humanity. And here's what I hope you're feeling right now. That this isn't just about patients out there somewhere. This is about the person sitting in front of you tomorrow. This is about who you choose to be in that room. That choice, that's your breakthrough. Because when people feel safe, they seek help sooner. When they feel understood, they listen more closely. When they feel valued, they participate fully in their care. And when they feel respected, they come back.
It's time for your map moment. A quick little push to keep you going. Stay focused, keep strong. Your pathway to success is on.
Take a breath. This is your map moment. The core lesson of today's episode is this. Your words matter. Your silence matters. Small, intentional actions build trust and protect dignity. Now, I need you to think about someone you love deeply. Picture their face. Hear their voice. Now imagine them walking into a clinic. Nervous, vulnerable, maybe scared. Imagine them sitting in that exam room wondering, will they see me? Will they respect me? Or will I have to fight just to be acknowledged? And then imagine the healthcare professional gets their name wrong, uses the wrong pronouns, or dismisses who they are. How would that feel? Knowing someone you love was made to feel invisible. That feeling right there, that's what's at stake every single day. Because here's the truth. Every patient sitting in front of you is someone's whole world. They're someone's child, someone's partner, and someone's reason to keep going. And they're hoping that you'll be the person who finally sees them. So here's your challenge this week. Choose one patient and ask them a question you might normally skip. What name would you like me to use? What pronouns do you use? Is there anything I should know to care for you respectfully? Just one patient, one moment of connection. And notice how it feels. Notice the shift in the room when you ask. Notice their shoulders drop. Notice the exhale. And notice the way their guard comes down. That's dignity being restored. That patient might have walked into 10 clinics before yours where no one asked, where everyone assumed, and where they left feeling like they didn't matter. And then they walked into your room, and you asked, and suddenly, they felt seen. That's the power you carry. If this feels uncomfortable, that's okay. That discomfort is showing where your growth edge is. It's inviting you to become better, not for me, not for some policy, but from the person sitting across from you whose humanity deserves your full respect. Because somewhere out there, someone loves the patient in front of you just as much as I love the person who taught me this lesson. And they're hoping you'll be the healthcare professional who treats their loved one with dignity. Don't let them down. One question, one patient, one moment that could change everything. That's your MAP moment this week. And when you do it, you win, your patient wins, and you take one step closer to becoming the healthcare professional you're truly meant to be. You have that power right now, today. Go use it. As we close today's episode, I want you to remember this. Every single one of us has the ability to change the way someone experiences healthcare. Not with grand gestures, not with clinical perfection, but with presence, with awareness, and with the decision to treat every human being with honor, exactly as they are. Whether you've been in the field for years, or you're preparing to take your very first step into it, you carry something extraordinary. The power to create a moment of safety in a world that doesn't always offer it. The power to let someone breathe easier just by the way you speak to them. The power to protect dignity, restore trust, and make sure no one else feels invisible in your care. That is not small. That is not optional. That is the heart of this profession. So as you move forward into your next shift, your next class, your next patient interaction, choose to lead with humanity. Choose compassion when it's easier to rush. Choose courage when silence feels safer. Choose understanding when assumptions try to take over. Choose to see people for who they truly are, not who the world has told them they must be. Remember that patient we imagined at the beginning? The one walking in, carrying a fear most people never see? You have the power to be the answer to the question they're silently asking. Will I be seen here? Will I be safe? Let your answer be yes. Because when you do, you don't just impact health, you impact lives. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you for opening your mind and allowing your heart to grow toward deeper, more inclusive care. This conversation matters, and your commitment to it matters even more. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep following your MAP, your medical pathway for success.